Become a member on Patreon. You'll get progress updates on Yap Session videos, as well as getting them a week before they release. You'll also get early access to overanalyzing Naruto, and random stuff too. You are not the main character. You are not the main character. You are not... close enough. Breaking news. You've heard it here first. Every anime has a main character. Can you hear my enthusiasm? Here's something you probably haven't heard before. Just because an MC is a better character than another MC, it doesn't mean they're a better main character. Cause that MC might be the best character in its anime, but they might not act like an MC. For the sake of a reference, I would say for a main character to act like a main character, they would have to meet all of the following criteria. First, they stand out. Second, they have something that sets them apart from others. Third, they have some sort of message, vision, or perspective that differs from their peers. And fourth, they have what I'm just gonna call clutch. When it matters most, they pull through. And in the case that they don't, they have a solid bounce back. For the rest of this video, I'll be using this, and I'm using air quotes here, guide, to show the following. Main characters that act like main characters that don't act like main characters, and side characters that act like main characters. If I haven't made it obvious enough, just because the MC acts like an MC, it doesn't mean they're a good character. A good example of this is Itadori. Okay, listen, I know. I don't hate JJK as much as you think I do, so calm down. Itadori checks all these boxes, but this is all he really has. The key to a good main character is to have all of these qualities while simultaneously being above them. That's what makes a compelling main character. Here's a good MC. Light checks all of these boxes while also being a compelling character due to how smart he is, as well as because of his unstable nature. But if we wanted to talk about good, unstable main characters, we should look at Kaneki. Season 1 Kaneki is very different, has a message, stands out, and has clutch. Then due to backstory, and the story itself, he becomes more and more unstable. It should be noted that when I say unstable, I don't necessarily mean insane, I mean more unpredictable. And trust me, that'll be important later. Tokyo Ghoul Season 2 is notoriously a huge fumble, and technically isn't even canon, but Season 1 Kaneki shows how being unstable turns into an absolute advantage. Pretty much every good main character I've talked about so far can stand alone, so let's just switch it up. Senku checks all of the main character boxes, especially the top two, but he's also very dependent on the characters around him. It might be tempting to compare him to Itadori, since he really doesn't have much more than the reasons behind why he checks these boxes, but when you look at what sets Senku apart from everyone else, Senku and Light is the better comparison. Both main traits are a driving force in the story and allow it to go any which way. Now that we've established a dependent MC, let's stay in the same lane but switch genres. Hyouka's MC, Oriki, is by nature very dependent on the characters around him, especially Chitanda. Oriki checks all of these boxes, but something to note is that the characters around him, again, especially Chitanda, are the underlying reason behind why his character can even begin to check these boxes. I know most of you haven't watched Hyouka, which you should by the way, you'll love the last episode, but just for context, Oriki is lazy and won't do something unless he has to. You might have connected the dots already, but that is in direct opposition to our first rule. Oriki, as a character, doesn't want to stand out, but the characters around him, I'm not saying it again, force him to stand out. That in turn is what makes Oriki as a character more than an MC. Now that I'm thinking about it, there's a main character in another anime that feels very similar. Let's talk about it. Kuroko and Oriki both have the same problem, but work differently. Oriki, in the end, is forced to stand out, well, I mean, not standing out is Kuroko's whole thing. But the reason Oriki acts like an MC while Kuroko doesn't is because in the end, Oriki does stand out while Kuroko still takes a backseat due to the more demanding characters. Haikyuu has taken note of this and made Hinata a lot more flashy. I should probably mention that just because they're a bad MC, it doesn't mean they're a bad character. In fact, every character I'm going deep into during this video, I believe is a good character, even if they are a weak MC. For example, Angelo from 91 Days doesn't have a message, but is still a very good character. In an anime like 91 Days, replacing message with motive drives the tone forward, and although it makes Angelo, the MC, weaker, it makes Angelo, the character, stronger. This should go without saying, but just because an anime has a weak MC, it doesn't mean the anime is bad at all. This is where you dislike the video, by the way. Takemichi is by far the worst MC I'll be talking about. He doesn't have a message or vision that he's pushing. He barely has clutch. And he only stands out because the story is following him, and not because he's a genuinely compelling character. Why that's a good thing is for a separate video, but him being a weak MC shines light on the side characters. Whether that makes Tokyo Revengers a good show is subjective opinion, but if you were to say no, the people of AniList would say you're on a whole nother level, you're geeking. That's just so bad. That's so bad. Genre is just as relevant to weak MCs than good MCs. Yui from K-On! Is genuinely the weakest MC I've mentioned, but K-On! Is also a goofy, lighthearted slice of life, so it only makes sense to be lenient. Animes like Tokyo Revengers and Kuroko no Basket have no such luxury. Even the other slice of life I've talked about, Hyouka, doesn't have that luxury either. Just look at this. K-On! Hyouka. K-On! Hyouka. Pure slice of lives can have weak MCs because it's just fun times. But the second a slice of life like Hyouka throws in a romance aspect, you need to have a good MC or it'll simply just crumble. And just like actions, romances aren't able to bend the criteria. But unlike actions, the reasons behind said checked boxes are mostly different. In most actions, boxes 2 and 3 are reliant on ability and viewpoint. But for romance, everything is reliant on personality. This forces the characters themselves to be more creative. For example, Kosei's second box is met because he can't hear the keys, which is something that only happens to him. And it's something that connects to a huge part of his character. Side note, but there's 2 more romance anime that both have interconnected names that do this just as well, but that's later. What happens when a romance mixes with an action? You get Charlotte. Jeez, calling Charlotte a romance is like calling Tokyo Revengers a romance. Charlotte is a good example of how the dynamic of a show can make a main character weaker. I know there's a chance you haven't watched Charlotte, so if you don't want to be spoiled anything, skip to this timestamp. Even though Otosaka does a complete 180 after his sister died, I told you, spoiler warning, he only fills 3 of the 4 requirements. And that one he's missing, a different perspective, yeah, he's not even close to meeting it. Only 3 of the 4 criteria would technically make him a bad MC, right? Right? The dynamic of the show is forcing Otosaka to have the same perspective as his peers. By the end of the anime, Otosaka's role is the chosen one. He acts as a voice and a leading force for his group. That wouldn't make him a bad main character in the slightest. It didn't make Luke Skywalker a bad main character. It just made him unconventional by this guide. And at the end of the day, these main characters were never weak. They were just unconventional. Surprisingly, and I mean no one could have predicted this, for a side character to act like an MC, they must meet all the 4 criteria. Who could have guessed, right? Certainly not the Neji is right people. Since we just talked about the main character of Charlotte, Otosaka, let's talk about one of the side characters from Charlotte, Tomori. It's rare to find an anime that has an MC that doesn't act like an MC while also having a side character that does. But once I explain how Tomori acts like an MC, I'll tell you why this is even able to happen. Tomori stands out. She has an ability, so she has something that sets herself apart. The experience she had with her brother has given her a perspective that differs from her peers. That's not really a spoiler, by the way, so don't worry. And she has the second most clutch in the entire show. All of these qualities don't just make her act like an MC, they make her the second best character in the entire show. You want to know who the best character is? Otosaka. The main character. You want to know why he's the best character? It's because the reason Tomori acts like a main character aren't as important and impactful to the story or character, while Otosaka's shape his character into the unconventional MC that he is. So even though Tomori acts like an MC, importance and impact keep her from actually being the MC. Let's ditch the romance for now and stick to action. Tsukasa from Dr. Stone has all the qualities of a main character. He definitely stands out. His strength and fighting ability sets him apart from others. He has a message or vision that differs from Senku, which makes him the antagonist. And he has just about as much clutch as an antagonist is allowed to have. But although Tsukasa has the traits of a main character, he works better as a side character, because in reality, the overall substance of the show will improve if you're following the smart over the strong. You'll notice character dynamics and roles in the story are a big reason on why these side characters are, well, side characters. Gojo from JJK is a perfect example of this. He exhibits all of these traits like almost too well. Like, there was a point where he got his own arc and immediately people were wondering if he was actually the main character. But in reality, even though he showcases the qualities of a main character, honestly better than Itadori, like the actual main character, his role as a mentor and the strongest work better for the story and the other characters around him. Cause like, who would want to watch an anime where the main character is the strongest, right? That'd be a disaster. Side characters that are best friends with the main characters usually have the highest chance to act like main characters too. Bakugo from My Hero shows this one off pretty well. He stands out. Everyone in My Hero has something that sets himself apart from others. He has clutch, and his angry and aggressive personality makes his personality differ from everyone else. Side note, that last one is really smart. Why is no one talking about that? Anyways, just like Gojo, a better character dynamic forces a character like Bakugo into the side character role. For an anime like My Hero, being the hot-headed best friend works than being the main character with anger issues. Let's stay with the best friend theme, but move back over to romance. Kaori from Your Lie in April might be the closest a side character can get to acting like a main character. She stands out. She plays violin, which sets herself apart. Her limited time gives a more live life to the fullest outlook. That mixed with her love and passion for music creates a completely unique perspective that no one else has. And she has as much clutch as a romance anime is allowed to have. Kaori is similar to Bakugo and Gojo in the sense that her role as a side character fits the story better, but in reality, Kaori's case is unlike everyone else's. Everything that makes her act like a main character is extremely important to the story, but what I say next is what makes her an absolute outlier. Those reasons aren't just important to the story, they're the driving force that changes the main character throughout the story. That's something that none of these other characters even come close to. That's what makes Kaori Jason Tatum, better known as the Anomaly. That's just so bad. That's so bad. Admittingly, Kaori is more of a deuteragonist in a dual protagonist environment rather than an actual side character. Now that I think about it, there's a couple more romance animes that do just that. They have dual protagonists. Horimiya, Toradora, and let's just add Naruto in there for fun. These three animes have two big things in common. First, they have dual protagonists, and second, each dual protagonist pair has a kiss scene. Fun fact, Horimiya's kiss scene was the hardest to find, but anyways, let's focus on that first one, because it's by far the most interesting route an anime can go regarding main characters. The first thing you'll notice with dual protagonists is how they change depending on the genre. For example, dual protagonists in romance animes are usually couples and pretty much never go directly against each other, while dual protagonists in actions would usually be rivals and will battle each other at some point. With that being said, I would say that good dual protagonists would also have to meet some criteria, just like main characters. First, they have to complement each other well. The most common example of this is yin and yang, but Japanese folklore has also been used. Second, they both have to be compelling in their own right. Third, they would have to have the ability to be the quote-unquote main character at any given moment. This means that they would also have to exhibit the main character traits. And this fourth one is optional, but it's pretty much always done anyways. One of them is a perceived MC, while the other is a deuteragonist. I'm gonna let you in on a not-so-little secret. All three of those anime I mentioned, Naruto, Toradora, and Horimiya, Yeah, they're all really good dual protagonist pairs. Let's just go down the list. I'm gonna start with Horimiya because they have the weakest dual protagonist pair out of the three. And by the way, that's like crazy to say because Horimiya's dual protagonist pair is still insanely good, but anyways, they complement each other well. Hori is pretty aggressive, while Miyamura is pretty passive and calm. They're not quite yin and yang, but they're pretty close to it considering their character traits. They're both pretty compelling characters almost immediately, and characters are second to romance in Horimiya. But this is where the rules of being a good dual protagonist pair get pretty dicey. Both characters have to act like main characters, which means they have to fill the previous 4 criteria. Since this will get confusing, I'm just gonna go one by one, and I'll be pretty concise with each character, starting with Hori. Hori stands out. Her overly aggressive personality and honestly just energy alone sets herself apart. Her personality and abandonment issues create a perspective that differs from her peers. Side note, again, really cool. And she doesn't really have any clutch, but she bounces back pretty well. Okay, cool. One of the characters of Horimiya acts like a main character. What about the second? Miyamura stands out really well. His calm and introverted personality sets himself apart. That personality, his middle school trauma, and romantic relationship with Hori allows him to have a completely different perspective that the show loves to remind us of. I wonder if this is the reason he's the best character, by the way. Just a thought. And he jumped this fence. I'd say that's as clutch as a slice-of-life rom-com can get. Cool. Both characters in a dual protagonist dynamic act like main characters, so they can become the main character at any point. Third requirement filled. Now, let's get into the fourth. People who have watched Horimiya will tell you the same exact thing. Yeah, Horimiya does not reach that fourth requirement, but it's optional. And that's because shows like Horimiya work better with no perceived MC. Horimiya is a slice-of-life romance, which allows them to constantly flip between both protagonists and focus on specific plot points. Doing this allows both characters in a dual protagonist pair stronger, while also having the potential to make their relationship stronger. That's why it's optional. Unlike Horimiya, Toradora fills all the requirements, and fills them pretty well. Yeah, they complement each other really well. They're complete opposites, and opposites attract. The idea of tiger and dragon is based off Japanese folklore. I won't even bother going deeper into this cause, you know, yeah. They're both extremely compelling. Taiga is extremely unstable and has the best character growth in the entire show, while Ryuji has a good personality and a differing perspective. Now, let's split them up. In this situation, it's best to start with Taiga since she really is the one with the most growth and honestly is the better character out of the two. Taiga stands out, there's no doubt about it. Her appearance and brash personality sets herself apart. Her outlook on love in the early episodes is different, and her belief of no one understanding her mixed with her outlandish personality and abandonment issues create a differing perspective. I wonder if this is why she's the best character with the most nuance in the entire show. Again, just a thought. And she doesn't have clutch. In fact, she's very much not clutch, but she bounces back really well. Episode 19 is the epitome of this, but because she's a clumsy idiot, she kind of gets forced into not bouncing back, and she gets more forced into confronting her feelings. Now, let's move on to Ryuji. Yeah, he stands out. That's not a surprise. His appearance and overall nice personality sets himself apart. His outlook on love and constant hope, mixed with his unique family situation, creates a differing perspective. And yeah, he's pretty clutch. There we go. They both act like MCs, but who's the perceived MC? Despite everything, it's still the guy. Of course it's Ryuji, even though Taiga's like by far the best character. In reality, it does make sense why it's Ryuji. His personality works better for the role, and Taiga being a deuteragonist is actually the reason she's such a good character. It allows her to have her moments, but not every moment. While Ryuji really doesn't have that since we're almost all the time following him. Just like Toradora, Naruto fills all the requirements. I'm gonna keep the Naruto section as concise as possible since, you know, and also because it's kind of just too easy. This is by far the best dual protagonist pair in anime, and that's not as much of a hot take as you might think it is. First off, they complement each other really well. They're reincarnations of Indra and Asura, and they're quite literally yin and yang. I'ma keep this next one short. Yeah, I'd say they're both pretty compelling. Now we're at the part where they split, since they both have to act like MCs. Naruto stands out. His determination, him being a Jinchuriki, and a lot more set himself apart from others. Alright, deep breath for this next one. His ninja way, his determination, his rough childhood, his experiences after Jiraiya's death, his personality and outlook, plus him being a Jinchuriki all create a differing perspective. Side note, I could have said more, but let's not do that. And Naruto is the most clutch character I've mentioned in this entire video, and his bounce backs are insane. Okay, let's move on to Sasuke. He stands out. Him being an Uchiha sets himself apart. Another deep breath for this next one. His need for revenge, him being an Uchiha, his rough childhood, him learning the truth of Itachi, his constant need for power, and overall dark and determined personality create a perspective that differs from his peers. And yeah, I'd say it's pretty clutch. Okay, they both act like MCs, kind of to an insane point, so I'd say that third requirement was met. And I wonder who the perceived MC is. It's probably Sasuke, but I'm not totally sure. What sets Naruto and Sasuke apart from all the other dual protagonist pairs is that Naruto as a show gives them a ton of time to both be main characters. We go from fated battle between brothers to the Pain Assault, two huge steps in both of their character arcs. Not only that, but they're rivals, and pretty iconic rivals at that. Final Valley Part 1 and Part 2 are some of the most iconic fights in anime, let alone Naruto, and that's mainly because of how good this pair is. At the start of this segment, I said that Toradora, Horimiya, and Naruto all had two big things in common, but I kinda lied. There's one more thing they have in common. All three of them, they not only have dual protagonists, they have extremely solid dual protagonists. You are not the main character. You are not the main character. But maybe you should be. You are the main character, but you're a little interesting. You are the main character, and that's undeniable, and you are both the main characters. I just want to get this out of the way. Every anime I mentioned in this video, you should check out if you haven't. You've probably watched the JJKs and the Death Notes, but some of the best characters I mentioned in this video are the characters from the smaller anime. Also, something else to note, even though I said it already, any character I took a deep dive into, I personally think they're good characters, or at least characters that can fit their role. I tried staying away from any characters I don't like, simply because of bias. And even though what makes a character good or bad is, well, subjective opinion, I tried to put an objective side on it while also leaving a decent amount of breathing room for characters that don't fit the mold. And at this point, you might be wondering what to take away from this video. And honestly, nothing. You clicked on this video so you can watch something while eating.